In the world of prepping, the primary objective is to be self-sufficient and prepared for any crises that may disrupt daily life. Whether it's a natural disaster, economic collapse, or widespread societal unrest, preparedness enthusiasts invest time and resources to ensure their survival and the safety of their loved ones. However, amidst the diligent efforts to stockpile essential supplies, there lingers a significant concern: the potential intervention of government agencies, particularly the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. FEMA has been endowed with a broad spectrum of executive orders that granted extensive powers to manage resources and dictate responses during national emergencies. For preppers, this translates into the alarming possibility that crucial survival items might be confiscated when a catastrophic event occurs. The idea of losing vital resources at the most critical moment is unnerving, and understanding what FEMA is authorized to seize becomes paramount to safeguarding one's stocks. EO 121-148, President Carter. This executive order assigns FEMA the responsibility to coordinate with state and local governments, as well as the private sector, for emergency preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. This broad coordination capacity could extend to the pooling of private resources, including those accumulated by preppers. EO 1998, President Kennedy, a more detailed directive that delineates the federal authority over food resources. This includes a vast array of commodities: farm equipment, fertilizer, and food resource facilities. The definition covers materials until they are no longer deemed commodities, which implies FEMA's control over both raw and processed food items crucial for survival. EO 1995. This order provides FEMA with control over all communications and media during emergencies, ensuring an organized response, while primarily aimed at maintaining order. It underscores FEMA's overarching authority to commandeer essential communication tools that preppers may rely on for information and coordination. EO 1997. This executive order gives FEMA oversight of fuel and power resources, enabling them to facilitate coordinated allocation and distribution during crises. Given that fuel and power are critical to running generators, vehicles, and other survival equipment, this authority puts preppers' reserves at risk of being redistributed or seized. Given the scope of these executive orders, it becomes evident why preppers are concerned about FEMA's potential actions in a crisis. The likelihood of these powers being exercised raises significant anxiety over losing critical survival items exactly when they are needed the most. Consequently, identifying and understanding the key resources that FEMA may target can assist preppers in developing strategies to protect their inventories. Now, we will delve into 7 specific prepping items that FEMA is most likely to confiscate. Awareness of these items and the rationale behind their significance can aid preppers in developing alternative plans to secure these resources, ensuring that they remain prepared no matter the circumstances. 7. Fuel. When catastrophic events strike, fuel becomes one of the most vital commodities, driving the effectiveness of emergency responses and the resilience of communities. Its critical role in crises cannot be overstated, especially as it powers navigation and the operation of essential equipment. Whether it's gasoline, diesel, or other variants, the availability of fuel dictates the functionality and responsiveness of various systems, from vehicles to generators. Fuel's importance escalates during emergencies when mobility and power can mean the difference between life and death. Emergency vehicles, ambulances, and fire trucks all rely on a steady supply of fuel to reach affected areas and to carry out rescue operations. Generators, another key element during blackouts and infrastructure damage, depend heavily on fuel to ensure hospitals, communication centers, and shelters can function. Essentially, fuel is the lifeblood that sustains critical services and enables effective disaster response. It's important to recognize that fuel is a finite resource, one that can quickly deplete in the wake of a disaster. With supply chains often disrupted, the scarcity of fuel can become a pressing challenge. As reserves run low, the options narrow to either evacuating the area or venturing out in search of more fuel, both of which come with inherent risks. The strain on fuel resources can lead to significant logistical complications, hindering the operation of machinery and vehicles essential for recovery efforts. In extreme situations, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, holds the authority to requisition fuel to ensure the efficiency of their operations and emergency responses. This power can be exercised to allocate fuel where it is deemed most necessary, often prioritizing public safety and critical infrastructure. However, this also poses a risk to private reserves. Your emergency fuel supplies, meticulously stored for personal use, may be subject to confiscation by authorities to support broader emergency management tasks. Understanding the potential for fuel seizure by FEMA is crucial for preppers. This realization urges the need for strategies beyond merely stockpiling fuel. It underscores the importance of having alternative plans, such as utilizing renewable energy sources, or positioning caches in multiple discrete locations to mitigate the impact of potential confiscation. 6. Radios and communication devices. In times of significant disaster, efficient communication becomes a lifeline. And this is why FEMA prioritizes the seizure of radios and other communication devices. These tools are crucial for relaying information, coordinating response efforts, and maintaining contact with affected populations. Consequently, FEMA is legally empowered to confiscate these devices. To manage communication better and prevent misinformation, one key reason FEMA targets communication devices is their critical role in controlling the narrative and ensuring the dissemination of accurate information. This is particularly evident with devices such as Belfang radios and ham radio systems, which are highly valued due to their long-range communication capabilities and robustness. However, their utility makes them prime targets for confiscation. Therefore, prepping individuals must carefully consider how they store and use such equipment to avoid detection and seizure. The presence of a large antenna on your vehicle is likely to draw FEMA's attention, signaling that you possess high-utility communication tools. This is because visible antennas are indicative of advanced communication setups, which FEMA associates with potential threats to their operational control. Hence, those aiming to safeguard their communication equipment should evaluate more discreet methods of usage and storage. For instance, dismantling antennas when not in use or employing portable and covert communication solutions can significantly reduce the risk of confiscation. Beyond the logistical considerations, it's also crucial to strategize on the operational use of these devices. Understanding the legal landscape and having covert communication protocols in place can ensure that individuals remain connected without attracting unnecessary attention from FEMA. Moreover, stashing backup devices in safe, undisclosed locations can serve as a fail-safe if primary tools are seized. 5. Food. Food is arguably the most critical resource in an emergency, and FEMA's authority to seize and control food supplies can be alarming for preppers. During a crisis, it is not uncommon for FEMA to take control of food supplies and farms in an effort to manage resources and distribution effectively. This means that the extensive preparation you've put into storing food for your family's survival might be undermined in a moment. FEMA takes on the responsibility of deciding how confiscated food resources will be allocated, potentially leaving individual efforts at self-sufficiency moot. The distress of losing stored food is profound, especially for those who have devoted significant time, money, and effort into preparing for such emergencies. The idea that someone unfamiliar with or unconcerned about your specific family's needs can seize your supplies adds to the anxiety. Unfortunately, in the chaos of a genuine crisis, authorities might prioritize the greater good over individual preparedness, leading to the possibility of your hard-earned food supplies being redistributed to others. To safeguard against this, it's essential for preppers to use multiple hidden storage locations. Spread your food supplies across various hidden caches to reduce the risk of losing everything if FEMA steps in. This strategy can ensure that even if some of your supplies are seized, you will still have access to other stashes. Think creatively about storage options. False walls, buried caches, and secret compartments can all play a role in protecting your provisions. Additionally, having a crisis strategy that involves surrendering some visible food storage to FEMA can act as a decoy. By giving up a portion of your supplies, you might be able to satisfy initial inspections and protect the bulk of your provisions which remain hidden. Plan carefully about what quantities and types of food to store overtly. Non-perishables and instant meals might be suitable decoys, while more valuable and nutritious items stay concealed. Staying ahead of potential obstacles by anticipating these actions is vital, and so is remaining discreet about your preparations. By carefully planning and implementing a stealthy storage strategy, you can better protect your family's food supply and ensure your efforts in prepping are not in vain when a crisis hits. 4. Generators. Generators are a cornerstone of emergency preparedness, providing critical power when standard electrical infrastructure collapses. In the event of a crisis, such as a natural disaster or significant threat to public safety, the ability to generate power independently can be life-saving. However, this essential resource does not go unnoticed, particularly by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, which operates under Executive Order 10997. This order grants FEMA extensive powers to requisition fuel and power resources, including private generators to support their disaster response efforts. The importance of generators in maintaining essential services during an emergency cannot be overstated. They are vital in powering communication systems, medical facilities, and essential community services that rely on continuous electrical supply. Without power, hospitals can't keep life support systems running, and communication networks can fall silent, leading to chaos and potentially exacerbating the disaster scenario. Consequently, FEMA's capability to detect and seize operating generators becomes a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it ensures that the most critically affected areas and facilities receive the necessary power to operate effectively. On the other hand, it can leave individual preppers and smaller communities without their privately stored energy source, jeopardizing their self-reliance plans. The detection of operational generators by FEMA can occur through various means. The noise generated is an obvious clue, but their detection capabilities might extend to more sophisticated methods, such as electronic surveillance or thermal imaging technologies. Once identified, FEMA's protocols might prioritize the redistribution of these resources to their disaster response camps, where the need for reliable power is paramount to support essential operations and maintain a semblance of order and stability. When SHTF shit hits the fan, the redistribution of generators by FEMA aims at optimizing the available power resources to maintain societal order and ensure that primary services function without interruption. Even though this rationale is rooted in greater good principles, it invariably means that individual preppers' stockpiles and independent contingency plans come under threat. Those who have prepared diligently by investing in generators should thus consider the potential necessity to safeguard against requisition or adopt quieter, less detectable means of power generation. 3. Weapons. When it comes to a major crisis, FEMA's actions surrounding the seizure of weapons have historically sparked significant debate. Limited precedents do exist where authorities have confiscated weapons in the name of public safety. Notable examples include the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans and the period following the Boston Marathon bombing. These instances, though relatively rare, highlight the delicate balance between individual rights and the collective need for security. In the wake of Hurricane Katrina, the chaotic environment in New Orleans led to widespread looting and violence. In response, law enforcement and the National Guard undertook measures to disarm civilians, aiming to restore and maintain order. This move was met with considerable resistance and legal challenges, underscoring the tension between government actions and constitutional rights. Similarly, after the Boston Marathon bombing, heightened security measures included restrictions on weapon possession as part of broader counterterrorism efforts. FEMA's potential role in weapon seizures during a major crisis resonates with these historical actions. The agency's primary mandate is to ensure public safety and maintain order, a responsibility that can sometimes lead to controversial measures like disarming civilians. This, however, raises significant constitutional concerns, particularly concerning the Second Amendment, which protects the right to keep and bear arms. Supporters of such measures argue that temporary restrictions on certain rights, including firearm possession, can be justified by the need for effective crisis management and the greater public good. They point out that in extreme situations, the presence of numerous armed individuals can exacerbate chaos and violence, complicating the efforts of emergency responders and law enforcement. By controlling access to weapons, FEMA could mitigate potential threats and aid in the stabilization of the affected area. Opponents, however, fiercely defend the Second Amendment and argue that the right to self-defense is even more critical during times of crisis, when public order may break down and law enforcement response can be delayed. They contend that disarming law-abiding citizens leaves them vulnerable to criminal elements and infringes on fundamental freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. 2. Medical supplies. When it comes to preparing for emergencies, medical supplies are indispensable. However, due to their critical importance, they are also more likely to be seized by FEMA during a crisis. FEMA has the authority to confiscate medical equipment and medicines that are considered essential from your stockpiles under certain conditions. This action is part of their broader mandate to ensure public health and safety during emergencies, but it can severely impact your preparedness efforts. One of the primary reasons medical supplies are more vulnerable to seizure compared to food is their immediate necessity in treating injuries and illnesses. In a situation where access to medical care is disrupted, having medical supplies on hand can mean the difference between life and death. Unfortunately, this high demand also means these items are top targets for government requisition. The extent of the seizure can vary based on the assessment of your health and the needs of the broader community. If deemed healthy, FEMA might conclude that your extensive medical preparations are not essential for your personal use. This evaluation could lead to the seizure of your medical supplies. to redistribute them to areas or individuals in greater need, unlike food where FEMA must leave you with a portion sufficient for survival. Medical supplies might be confiscated entirely, leaving you with nothing. Additionally, specific medical items like antibiotics, surgical kits, and advanced first aid supplies are extremely scarce during a significant crisis. These items' scarcity makes them highly valuable targets for FEMA's requisition efforts. The rationale is to prevent widespread health crises that could arise from untreated injuries or medical conditions in the broader population. This risk underscores the importance of having a well-thought-out strategy for your medical supplies. Diversifying your storage locations, keeping a low profile about your stockpiles, and learning basic medical skills can help mitigate the impact of a potential seizure. While it's essential to comply with emergency regulations, being prepared for scenarios where your medical supplies might be commandeered can enhance your resilience. When the situation escalates and FEMA exercises its authority to ensure public health and safety. 1. Bottled water. When disaster strikes, bottled water becomes one of the most critical resources for survival. It is vital to have a sufficient supply, as access to clean water can make the difference between life and death. FEMA recommends having at least 1 gallon of water per person per day for a minimum of 3 days. This stockpile ensures that in the initial days post-disaster, individuals and families have enough to meet basic hydration and sanitation needs. The importance of this cannot be overstated. Clean water is essential not only for drinking, but also for cooking and maintaining hygiene. Often in the chaos following a disaster, local water systems can become contaminated or break down entirely, leaving residents without a reliable source of clean water. This vulnerability is why preppers emphasize the need for not just having stored water, but also the knowledge to purify additional sources. Despite the emphasis on personal preparedness, there is a unique risk associated with bottled water in times of crisis: the potential for seizure by FEMA. During widespread emergencies, FEMA can confiscate stockpiled water to distribute it among the wider population. While this measure is intended to ensure that everyone has at least some access to water, it can leave those who have diligently prepared vulnerable to shortages. This is particularly concerning given the chaos and high demand for resources in such scenarios. To mitigate the risk of being left without water if FEMA were to seize your stored supply, preppers should consider keeping a portion of their water hidden. This hidden stash acts as a backup that authorities may overlook, increasing the likelihood that your family's needs will be met even if public distribution systems cannot be relied upon. Additionally, investing in high-quality water filtration systems and purification tablets is crucial. These tools and skills can extend your ability to access safe water from inadequate or natural sources, specifically when stored supplies dwindle. In conclusion, understanding the items that FEMA is most likely to seize during a crisis and taking proactive measures to safeguard your supplies can significantly enhance your preparedness. From weapons and medical supplies to bottled water and other critical resources, the risk of requisition is a genuine concern. By diversifying your stockpile locations, maintaining a low profile, and acquiring essential skills such as water purification and basic medical knowledge, you can better navigate the challenges posed by potential FEMA actions. Ultimately, the key to resilient prepping lies in a balanced approach that ensures compliance with emergency regulations, while also protecting your ability to sustain and defend yourself and your loved ones in times of severe disruption.